Good morning to you out there. It's another great day for us to see what is happening in the country and the stories that our papers have been able to capture. It is the Dailies here on Echo Television International. I am Rachel Tanze, and this morning I have Joyce Jakada with me on the program.
Such
Joyce,
an honor.
good
Good
morning.
morning, Rachel.
You're welcome.
Yes, TGIF.
Thank God it's Friday.
Good morning.
Good morning. How is the weather?
Yeah, it's cold here in Jos, but thank God we are coping.
Yes, we are.
Sure.
And to you out there, how is the weather? I hope it is treating you well. So we'll be moving on to the paper, and Joyce will be taking us with the first paper.
Okay, on the new Nigerian newspaper, we have the first story that says, Unite Against Corruption. EFCC chairman urges youth. Details of that story is on page 2. We also have running costs killing media establishments, Kaduna executives tell UNICEF, with the rider advocate reintroduction of information ministry in Kaduna. Details of that story is on page 4. The bold headline says, justice system in Nigeria weak, sick, IGP confesses, with the rider recidivism, a major threat to fight against insecurity. That's coming from CRAN. We also have Tax Reform Bill Committee, Senate sacks Chief Whip. Details of that story is on page 5. On 2026, Osun, people will show APC Pepe in Guba election, coming from Governor Makinde, and details of that story is on page 3. We also have police naps Katsina bank chief over ATM fraud, 18 million withdrawals from customers. Details of that story is on page 7. Flooding remains major threat to safety, well-being of Nigerians. This is coming from Reps. Details is also on page 5. Timi Frank warns of mass protests if Pharaoh Timi is not released, with the rider issues 48-hour ultimatum to FG. You can find details of that story on page 2. And the last story on the new Nigerian newspaper says, Customs Kaduna area command boost revenue profile by 98%. And details of that story is on page 3. And for these and more stories, you can get the new Nigerian newspaper. Over to you, Rachel.
Now, the next paper is First News. The first story, hashtag Free Daily Farotimi. Protest set for December 10 nationwide. And this is not the first time we're seeing activists like this getting arrested. I remember that story during the Muhammadu Buhari's administration, and then he was also arrested, kept in custody for a very long period of time. We saw these kinds of protests. Eventually, he was released, but it was after a lot of times, like he also felt the government, like they were not easy on him. So I think we have administrations come and go that are willing and ready to silence activists. This time around, they say defamation of character. For Sowore, it was a different thing. However, these are activists who are out there speaking against what is happening in the current administration. So we just have to wait and see what this protest will be at the end of the day, if it will yield the result they want, that is his freedom, his release, and all of that, or what will the government reply or reaction to this protest will be at the end of the day.
I think, Rachel, this calls for proactive measures because Nigeria is already at a hard time right now. Nigerians are going through a hard time, and it's sad for us to allow things that might escalate into violence.
Yes.
We know how that a lot of times when things like this occur, people take advantage of it, and then you hear of shootings, deaths,
Yes.
and all of that. But I hope that that would not be the case. I mean, we live in a country, or we have a country that freedom of expression is the fundamental right of each person. So you want to ask the question, why is it that when people, especially activists, speak, like they end up behind bars?
Yeah.
So I do hope that the needful is going to be done. If Pharaoh Timi is not guilty of anything, he should be released. There's no need like keeping him behind bars and allowing protests to take place, and then this whole issue escalating into violence before taking reactive measures. I mean, the time is now for the government and people that are involved to be proactive rather than reactive measures.
True. Still on First News newspaper, LP kicks as Ibori's daughter, 5 reps members join APC. Reps urge fewer checkpoints on Onisha Enugu Road over extortion. Lakurawa terror group linked to deadly explosion in Zamfara. We saw yesterday an explosion that happened in Zamfara yesterday that claimed about 12 lives or thereabout. We can see that Lakurawa, the terrorist group, is involved, are linked to that explosion. South senators back tax reform bills. The big story on the paper, 10,000 dead in military custody. We have Amnesty International demands accountability. The writer says report highlights extrajudicial killings, torture, and sexual violence. 8,034 terrorists neutralized, 11,623 arrested, 6,376 rescued in 2024, a report from the Defense Headquarters. Lagos court sentences couple, the registers charge over 52 million naira fraud. Senate stands firm, no suspension of tax reform bills against what we had on the papers yesterday. The Senate are saying we will not be bullied. We are still on the tax reforms issue. We have a picture story, strengthening climate action, where we can see NNPC CEO Mele Kyari, fifth from left host U.S. State Department Robert Lehman, and Deloitte's team at NNPC Towers, Abuja, for discussions on methane abatement projects to reduce emissions and promote sustainable practices in Nigeria's oil and gas sector. And that's all the news on First News newspaper.
All right, moving to the Matrix newspaper, we have OPEC extend Nigeria's oil production quota of 1.5 mbpd to 2026, and you can find details of that story on page 3. Pacquiao 13 orders to be inducted into Boxing Hall of Fame in 2025. Details is on page 25. The bold headline says PDP rocked by fresh crisis. Bot bombs NWC over failure to convene NEC meeting. Tips North Central to produce next national chairman. And we also have how Borno Deputy Governor orders cheated death in Max airplane incident. Details is also on page 3. Tax reform bills will not be bullied, coming from Senate. Deny suspending deliberation on bills as South senators back bills. Don't politicize tax reforms, TUC warns Nigerians. Those against bills politically motivated, says Abba Moro. Perhaps the Senate says this is an executive bill, and if it is to be withdrawn, it will definitely be coming from the executive. We also have 4 Labour Party, 1 PDP rep members defect to APC. Details is on page 9. How Dele Farotimi defamed me in recent book, Afe Babalola. Details is on page 8. For a lot of people that are asking, what did he do? What is the story behind? You can check page 8 on Afebaba Lola's side of the story. We also have ECOWAS court orders Nigeria to pay 5 million to torture victim. Details is on page 9. And towards carbon emission reduction, you can find details, like we have a picture story there. The U.S. Department Global Methane Program Manager, Robert Lehman, and the others on that picture story. You can just find that story. We also have Davido reveals Choma's role in his decision to get married, and for those interested in entertainment story, you can check that story on page 23. And that's all on the Matrix newspaper. Over to you, Rachel.
On the Daily Times newspaper, the first story is still on tax reform. Bills not withdrawn, Senate will not be intimidated. A statement from Akpabio, the Senate president. Continuous shifting of NEC meeting may spell doom for PDP, a statement from the Board of Trustees. NEC meeting asks North Central to shop for IU's replacement. Tinubu meant well for Nigerians, a statement from Works Minister Umahi. Police inspector, 4 Nigerians back Integrity Icon Award. Lagos ranked 14th largest city globally. And that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
All right, moving to the Nation newspaper, we have Borno woman wins every home a garden 25 million top prize. Details is on page 2. CBN explains extension of early exit plan to all workers. Details of that story can be found on page 7. Zenith Bank is winner of 2024 Bankers Award. That story can be found on page 7. We also have Abiodun present 1.05 trillion 2025 expenditure plan. You can find details on page 5. NDLEA arrested 14,480 suspects, seized 2.4 mkg illicit drugs in 10 months. Details is on page 5. And we give it to the NDLEA for doing a great job there. South African targets Nigerian lithium for e-vehicle revolution. We also have tax reform bill, Senate executive in bid for consensus with the rider organized private sector, tax expert Sanwo-Olu, reform a necessity. We also have 61 aircraft to join NAF fleet next year with the rider Air Chief, it's our golden era. The last story on the front page of the Nation newspaper says Kwara government demotes teacher for stripping core member. Details is on page 5. I mean, all these abuses against core members must end. We keep having such stories. I mean, there was a time we had we saw a picture story of how core members were being flogged or asked to queue in, and those that were not following the sometimes it just makes me wonder what a country we find ourselves in. But all of these perpetrators of this violence must be like arrested, because this should serve as deterrent to other people. Stripping this teacher, I think, is a good one, because like this teacher that is found stripping a corps member is just so sad that most times you find out that these acts like keep going on. People continue to perpetrate it because there are no punishment attached to it. But by the time we see that these people that are found guilty of all this violence are being punished, then it will serve as deterrent to other people. So that's all on the front page of the Nation newspaper.
Joyce, concerning this harassment, to be honest, what surprises me the most is the people who stand by and watch it happen. Because a lot of these things don't happen in isolation. Except of cases of abuse, molestation. We can say these things happen behind closed doors. But when it comes to harassment, public harassment, they happen publicly. And we have people standing by and allowing certain things to happen. If the person that is doing it is senseless, rude, and stupid, why are you, who is witnessing it, allowing certain things to happen? It says our mindset. It speaks a lot about us. And this is even one of the few things we can talk about, how when it comes to any violence during election, core members are usually the target. And there was once a time in every Nigerian election history, a core member have to lose their life during election, or well, we didn't witness that, or perhaps it wasn't recorded, but we hope that because it wasn't on the news, it means it didn't happen in the past election, and we're looking forward to more safety. But now we are seeing that the problem is moving from election violence now to harassment in individual in their place of primary assignments and all of that. Something needs to be done about it, and we just hope that we don't have a peak, that it begins to die down where it already is.
Honestly.
And the next paper is Nigerian Tribune. The big story is blackout. Genco's TCN discuss in trouble. The writer says as Senate threatens to reverse privatization of sector, accuses them of adding no value, laments each grid collapse cost $25 million to restart. The first story at the top of the paper, PDP chair, Board of Trustee insists on zoning office to North Central. Wants zonal leaders to replace IU, says further delay of next meeting undermines trust. Tax reform bills, we won't suspend legislative action. A statement from the Senate. Akpabio overrules deputy on composition of ad hoc committee. Borno deputy governor, over 100 others escape plane accident. Federal government launches 20 billion naira consumer credit fund for locally assembled automobiles. You can find details on page 2, and I believe this we can applaud the government for doing that. If we want to consume more Nigerian-made product, then I believe the government needs to be able to help fund some of these projects. Ibori's daughter, 4 LP federal lawmakers defect to APC. Court OK's probe of funds allocated to 17 LGAs in Abia from 2019 to 2023. You can find details on page 27. NEPC frowns on $480 million expenditure on importation of 3 million tons of rice. And we have a cross sections of pictures. The one at the top from left, we can see Head Corporate Communication Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria, that is AMCON, Mr. Jude, and we can see Company Secretary Mrs. Eyinlola, and we have Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer Mr. Benga, and Executive Director Mr. Adeshola. This is during an event in Lagos yesterday, and we can see the second picture, Oyo State Governor Engineer Seyi Makinde, Osun State Governor Senator Ademola Adeleke. From right, we can see Ato Ojo of Oksobo Obajimo, and Speaker of the Osun State House Assembly, Right Honorable Adewale, and Senator Olubiyi Fadeyi left at the commissioning of the Dualai Stadium testing ground, Ilesa Road on Wednesday. And this photo credit is from the Osun State government, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Moving to the Blueprint newspaper, we have news on military action can solve only 30% of our security challenges. This is coming from the CDS. We also have on business, NNPCL defense blending process highlights Port Harcourt refinery progress. Details is on page 21. We have on sports, Super Eagles get presidential boost for 2026 World Cup qualifiers. Lovers of sports, you can check this story on page 32. We also have the bold headline that says, we won't be intimidated over tax reform bill, Senate declares. With the rider says, Tinubu can withdraw bill, rejigs panel to meet FG's team. Idris to speak on tax reforms at Kaduna NIPR AGM, and details is on page 15. We have the story, the controversies over the impropriety of or otherwise of the tax reform bill currently before the National Assembly are far from being over, as the Senate Thursday declared that it can't be intimidated to suspend or withdraw the proposed law forwarded by the executive arm of the government. Rather, the Red Chamber said it was committed to advancing legislative process on the document. Speaking during plenary on the reported withdrawal of the bills, the Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, said they remain, and details is on page 8. We also have 2025 Hajj FCT Muslim Pilgrims Board fixes 8.4 million initial deposit. Troops neutralizes over 500 terrorist leaders, 8,034 orders 2024. That's coming from Defense Headquarters. With the rider, arrest 11,623, rescue 6,376 hostages. The Defense Headquarters Thursday said troops deployed to different theaters of operation across the country neutralized over 500 terrorist leaders, 8,034 foot soldiers, and arrested 11,623 in 2024. The Military High Command also said troops rescued 6,376 hostages in the last 1 year. Director Defense Media Operation Major General Edward Buba disclosed this while briefing journalists in Abuja. He said troops recovered 8,216 weapons and 211,459 ammunition. The defense spokesperson revealed that troops denied oil thieves crude estimated at the sum of over 57 billion, and according to him, the breakdown of the recoveries are as follows. You can find details of that story on page 8. And we also have Naira appreciates to 1,644 on electronic. I think you can check the blueprint for these stories and more. Over to you, Rachel.
All right. The next paper is New Telegraph. Tinubu moves to bring Peugeot Dunlop back to Nigeria. This is a recall. You can start with the details on the front page. High interest rate will mark contribution to $1 trillion economy. This is the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria saying, and we know that the plan is that by 2030, we have a $1 trillion economy. You can find details on page 17. Bill to prohibit gas flaring passes second reading in House of Reps. On Japa, Ocean opts for retirees as doctors, nurses leave for overseas jobs. Borno Deputy Governor, 100 others escape death. You can find details on page 4 and 5. African Development Bank, Bank of Africa signed 50 million euros risk-sharing pact to boost trade. The big story on the paper, tax reform bills. Controversy rages on as Senate says documents not withdrawn. Vows not to be intimidated. Berate discourse GenCos TCN over poor electricity delivery. As Navy lawmakers, CSOs reject Nigerian Coast Guard. You can find details on page 2, 3, and 8. Ibori's daughter drums PDP for APC. Ibori daughters dumps PDP for APC. LP loses 4 reps to ruling party. Bitcoin surges past 100,000 US dollar for the first time. Weak opposition threat to Nigeria's democracy exposes citizens to great harm. A statement from ADC. Problems of the North caused by elites. This is a statement from Ado. You can find details of his statement on page 11. Still on New Telegraph, PDP crisis. Board of Trustee condemns repeated shifting of neck meeting. Says delay undermining confidence in the party to meet with Wike. Urges not central to nominate IU's replacement. Decision timely and patriotic. A statement for Ologbondian. You can find details on page 4 and 26. And we have AMCON intervention guides aero contractors back to profitability. A statement from Alade. You can find details on page 8. Rather, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
And moving to Daily Independent newspaper, we have AMCON intervention pushes aero contractors back to profitability. That's coming from Alade. We also have court orders EFCC to probe Abia LG's phone from 2019 to 2023. The bold headline says tax reform bill still alive. We can't be bullied, Senate declares. With the riders says bills receiving considerations at various levels. Only the executive arm can withdraw tax reform bills. Warns against misrepresenting the upper chamber. Why we constituted 10-man committee to meet FG team. We are investigating airpeace over exploitative ticket pricing coming from FCCPC, and details of that story is on page 29. Criticism of coastal road project out of envy, says Umahi. Details is on page 7. Nigeria's private sector commits 4.6 billion naira to boost family planning. Details of that story is on page 6. FG begins move to reset national addressing seat system. To get details of that story, you can check page 6 of the Daily Independent newspaper. We have LP Reps Caucus demands impartiality in Farotimi defamation case. Details of that story is on page 7. All Nigerians are asking for is justice in this case and impartiality. We also have delay in convening NEC meeting may deepen PDP crisis. Board of Trustee warns. Acts not central to nominate IU's replacements. On Boko Haram, we have 10,000 civilians died in military custody, and this is coming from Amnesty International. To get details of that story, you can check page 29. And for these and more Daily Independent newspaper, that's all on the paper. Over to you, Rachel.
On Nigerian News Direct, the big story is on tax reform bill. Bill not suspended, only president can withdraw, with a statement from the Senate. And for me, Joyce, this only solidify what I said at the start of the week, that when we see certain bills, as long as it's coming from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it's not going anywhere. I think Nigerians can do whatever they want to. There could be backlash left, right, center, uproar in the Senate, House of, there could be disagreement left, right. Nigerians can lament day and night, but so far so good. One thing that I've been consistent with the administration is once the administration says they will do a certain things, they see through with it. We can see that with every other policy that have been unfair to our economy, and despite the protests, what was the outcome? Yeah, despite the pressure, we saw nothing rather than we feel your pain, and it ended there. And Nigerians had no option than to be patient and adjust to the economic situation of the country. And we are now seeing the Senate saying, well, it is from the presidency, and except he withdraws this bill, we cannot do anything about it. The message there is, okay, all you can do, rather than being angry, rather than politicizing it, rather than saying it's against the North, rather than all the accusations or allegations around this reform bill, what you can do is for us to sit and join heads together and look at the gray areas and say, okay, what is okay about this reform bill and what is not? This is what we can correct and what we can fix about it, and then it moves, because by virtue of how things are going, the tax reform bills have come to stay. Whatever level of hearing is at, I know it's going to eventually
pass second reading.
Second reading. I know eventually it's going to be passed as a bill. When we have representatives out there, and we have members of the House of Assembly and reps, you are the representative of Nigerians. You are representing me out there. We don't need these kinds of uproar and insult that we saw at the start of the week. You are either out of touch of reality or in touch with reality. You sit down and you bring out your own concrete and genuine reason to why, okay, we cannot accept 15% VAT, we cannot accept this on personal tax, personal income or allowance tax, we cannot accept this, and that, because from my own region constituency, when we come, this is the problem, this is the situation, this is the earning, this is the this, that, and you say, for that I am moving that, yes, we need a tax reform, but this should be how it is implemented. I am not seeing our representatives doing that. All the backlash of trying to impoverish the North and all of that, that is on you. You have been the one not enriching your people. You have been the one not taking education to the grassroots. You have been the one not developing. So when we have an administration that is coming and seeing the need for a tax reform, because we cannot thrive without our taxes operating, a tax system that is operating properly in this country. Let's not make it look like a tax reform is an entirely bad thing. But what are we reforming in the tax system is what matters. And this is where you stand your ground and say, well, Mr. President, if you're bringing this tax reform, it has to be this. You put your voices together and you make sure that, okay, this is how the reforms go, and in the end, it is not going to impoverish the poor that you have made poor in the first place. We can leave it that way, and then you make sure that, you know what, businesses at the end of the day will be able to thrive regardless of the tax reform. You make sure that, you know what, education is not going to suffer, because at the look of certain things, we have educational organizational system like TETFund that might suffer as a result of a withdrawal of certain tax and putting it for NELFund, which of course is a welcome policy in funding this NELFund. But you have to sit down, join your head, and rather than trying to just politicize this whole problem and look like, well, the administration is how to suck Nigerians dry, in as much as it's doing that at the moment. But you should have a better way of going about it, because tax reforms, if we're to be honest, is important. If our tax system has not been working well, there's a need to sit down and make it work well. But don't just be don't just be blank about your uproar, about your backlash. Be precise and intentional about what you think the direction the tax reform should take that will be beneficial to every Nigerian, regardless of their status quo.
I mean, Rachel, for growth, for development, reform is necessary. Not just about tax, but even all sectors. Just this morning, we read on one of the paper how that the IGP was confessing that the justice system is actually weak. And when it is weak, it means that it's not living up to its responsibility. We have issues of human rights abuse, we have issues of corruption, we have issues of he who pays the piper dictates the tune. People commit offenses and go away with it. We have people behind bars for offenses they didn't commit just because of the weak justice system. Unless we get to that point that we take responsibility of our actions, then we go nowhere. Like you rightly explained, I think it's up to the representatives to ensure that they explain this tax reform to the people. I was listening to the chairperson of the Progressive Forum, talking about how that most of the arguments coming from even the northern part or some citizens is somehow baseless, because people are just making random comments. Oh, it's meant to impoverish us. Oh, it's without having an understanding of the pros and cons of these tax reforms. I mean, there's no country that will boast of development or growth without reforming its tax. So what is really sacrosanct for me in all of this is for clear understanding. And like you rightly mentioned, where there are gray areas, like people should bring it out. And that's why we always encourage the citizens not just to sit back after election and then watch your members go there, take their share of the national cake. When it's another time for election, they come back and then spray money on you and you go back again and vote them. What are they actually doing there? Are they actually representing you? Or they come back to you to mobilize you to kick against the policy when it does not favor them? Because that's what you have in most cases. I mean, individuals have talked about how that in Nigeria, we have enough for everybody's need. But the greed of few individuals is what has actually kept us here, and even bad leadership. So it is actually important that this whole tax reform be really looked into. I mean, the Senate chamber, the Red Chamber have already talked that they are not going backward as far as this is concerned. It's even an executive bill. It is just left for Tinubu to decide to withdraw it. So I think at this moment is for us as a people, as a region, to actually take a good look at this and present our case logically, rather than just rendering abuse, rather than just trying to take us backward, instead of looking out for ways. And if it's going to impact on our revenue, why not look out for other means of generating revenues? I mean, over time, we've seen how that a lot of organizations, companies, investors not even coming to Nigeria because they complain about lot of taxes on them. So they would rather prefer to move out. Just in this 2024, between 2023 and 2024, we've seen how there are a lot of companies have had, like, they resorted to other countries because of how the environment is not enabling, especially as it has to do with tax. So I think it's needful that instead of looking at our regions and saying, oh, it's meant to make us weak, poorer, and then at the detriment of the other niche regions becoming rich and all of that, we should think of how we can generate more income, other source of revenue, and present our case in a manner that is more civilized, rather than just making backlash. Because these have made certain lawmakers and governors to be against even the federal government. But we hope the needful is going to be done.
Still on Nigerian News Direct, on oil thieves, collaboration with security forces cut losses to 10% from 97%. Collaboration with security forces cut losses to 10% from 97%. This is a statement from Olumelu. You can find details on page 6, and that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
All right, moving to Daily Sun newspaper, we have the first story still on Farotimi. Soweray plans protest against judiciary orders. LP reps Huriwa NAS demands release, and details is on page 27. And like we rightly said earlier on, I mean, this is time for the government to be proactive rather than being reactive, waiting for all of these protests to take place and then some people taking advantage of it and turning it violent at the detriment of the citizens. So the needful must be done, and proactive measures must be put in place. And I hope that in the end there won't be any form of impartiality, but like justice will be allowed to take its course. We also have still on the tax reform bills, we didn't suspend deliberation, and this is coming from the Senate against stories that were going around that the bill was suspended. The rider said South senators back bills. Reforms will bring progress to Nigeria, coming from NOA. PDP chairmanship board of trustee wants Damagun out. Zone seat to North Central. With the rider tells Tinubu to review harsh policies and corruption. Details is on page 6. We have picture story, concerned citizens of Nigeria. I think this is protest. And you can check the Daily Sun for that story. NEPC frowns at $840 million expenditure on importation of 3 million tons of rice. Details is on page 25. Chukwuemeka Odumegu Ojuku's University is rising varsity from East, coming from Omenuba AGVC. Port reforms, 3.5 trillion bonded terminal, investment at risks, operators warns. Details on page 2. And the last story on the front page of the Daily Sun newspaper says 4 LP reps, Ibori's daughter defects to APC. With the rider opposition party threatens legal action over gale of defection, and details on page 5. I mean, Rachel, this is not even news, because over time that's what we keep seeing. Politicians, like, once election is over and the next election begins, the season begins, you see a lot of defection. But most time the question is on what ground, or over whose interest. Like, people raise a lot of questions concerning this defection, and that's why some people will tell you all of them are the same. When you start making arguments about parties or support for parties and all of that, people tell you, see, forget about these people. At the time you see this person defecting to this person, defecting to that party. But what is more important is for the citizens to look at the character, to look at competence when it comes to electioneering season, beyond party. And that's why we always kick against this party election, where people always say, oh, I am for this party. So regardless of the individual, regardless of the competence, as far as the person is coming from this party, you want to vote, they tell you up, down, like it's going to one party. These people at the end of the day will defect to other parties and then leave you there fighting with your fellow citizens about party. What is more important is for us to look out for people that have love for the nation, people that are competent, and people that have leadership skills that will bring about change and ensure that people enjoy dividends of democracy.
Yes, I mean, Joyce, 2023 election taught Nigerians a great deal of lessons. I am looking forward to 2027 to see the outcome of what we have learned regarding candidacy over party. Yes, exactly. And I'm just looking forward to seeing if Nigerians will truly go beyond party and say, you know what, this look like a better and most preferable, competent candidate, and we will go for this person, even if he is just coming from a grassroots underdog party in our party system. All right, to our viewer out there, thank you for staying with us so far. We would like to catch our breath for some few seconds. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zoom on Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back. The program is still the Dailies here on Echo Television International. And if you were just joining us, what have been making rounds on our paper is the tax reform bills. And we are seeing that the Senate is saying they cannot do anything about it. They cannot be bullied. The president is the only one that have the authority to take back the bill, because this is a presidential, or rather an executive bill. So regardless of what Nigerians are saying, regardless of what politicians, the northern leaders, the House of Representatives, regardless the uproar surrounding the tax reform bill, it is still saying the president is the only one that can say, you know what, I am taking back my bill. But until then, we are seeing that perhaps so far so good, the tax reform bill have come to stay. I am Rachel Tanze, and I still have Joyce Jakarta on the show.
Thank you, Rachel.
Welcome. Now we will move to the next paper, which is the Vanguard newspaper. The first story, OPEC extends Nigeria's 1.5 million barrel per day oil quota to 2026. 10,000 people die in military custody. This is a statement from Amnesty International concerning Boko Haram terrorist group. Privatization of power sector, total failure. Senate is saying so. Activist group plan nationwide protest December 10 in move to free Farotimi. You can find details on page 10. Tax reform bills is a big story on the paper. Akpabio overrules Barrow, says bills not withdrawn or suspended. Vows Senate won't be intimidated by external pressures. Senate removes Mongonu from committee. South senators back bills, pass confidence vote in Akpabio. Reform must enjoy political technocratic acceptability. Statement from Fayemi. Iowa youth call Northern elites bluff, declare support for reform. How we tackled 97% OML 17 oil theft. Statement from Olumelu. 4 LP reps decamp to APC. PDP crisis, Board of Trustees decries shift of neck meeting, asks North Central to nominate IU's replacement. Nessence on board's mainstream energy solution for Nigeria's carbon registry. Jonathan's posters with new political platform flood Kano. This is ahead of 2027 general election. And if you want to know how true this is, you can find details on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper. Ahead of 2026 World Cup qualifiers, Onazi queries Super Eagles commitment. You can find details of this sports story on page 31. We have a picture story showing winners of the Glow Festival of Joy promo, and that's all the news on Vanguard newspaper.
Moving to this day newspaper, we have central banks EFEMS FM sees Naira gain significantly on its way to price discovery, with the rider appreciates to 1,597 official and 1,640 at parallel market. Analysts laud platform for transparency and market stability. We have BOL AGF sign $50 million deal to boost credit to MSMEs, women entrepreneurs, grain business and businesses. Details of that story is on page 5, and that's a good one coming from the AGF and BOL. We also have Keyamo launches new reforms at MMIA. GAD orders dismantling of joint luggage inspection table. Details of that story is on page 33. We have Senate declares power sector privatization total failure. You can find details of that story on page 32. Bamidele, tax reform bills alive were never suspended. With the rider, Red Chamber Restructures Panel confirms first meeting with AGF's team. Abba Moro caution against politicization of debate. South senators pass confidence vote in Akpabio, backs proposed law. CITN urges stakeholders to make facts-based recommendations. Just like you said earlier, Rachel, we don't just make loud noise. Yes. We don't just talk about, oh, this bill is intended to impoverish one side, but make recommendations yes. that are actually fact-based. And we have a picture story there that that is on the Code of Conduct Bureau Chairman visit to the Senate. And on the picture there, we see the Chairman Senate Committee on Appropriation, and also the Senate Minority Leader, Abba Moro, Senate Chief Whip, Tahir, and then Chairman Code of Conduct Bureau, Abdullahi Bello, the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, and then the Senate Leader, Opeyemi, during the courtesy visit to the President of the Senate in his office on Thursday. And that's all on this day newspaper.
Now let's move to the world of sports, starting with Punch Sports Extra. The first story, Justin Madugu exclusive. With a statement from him, my goal is to do well with the team, regain our top spot, play football with passion, develop players, and win the 2025 WAFCON, that is the Women African Cup of Nation. My 2025 WAFCON objective. You can find details on page 6. GOAT debate, we have Chilini picks Ronaldo over Messi. Liverpool keen on Lookman. PSG prepare Osimhen January bid. Fans question Ajibade omission. Back Nadozi for honors. This is for the CAF Women's Award 2024. You can find details on page 7. Chelsea set club goal record. Pep happy to end City winless run. Slot Hill special Salah. Arteta happy with Arsenal's will to win. On rugby, Nigeria granted full membership in WWRF. On cricket, Yellow Greens continue unbeaten streak at Continent Cup. Obasa Games 2024 Indoor Games end today, and that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
All right, moving to Business Day newspaper for lovers of entertainment news. Can Funke Akindele break her billionaire box office record? Check details of that on page 31. We have the bold headline on inflation bites. A liter of petrol equals 1,975 Peugeot wagon. We also have what to know as Senate passes capital market reforms bill. Details is on page 32. 1 year T-bill attracts 2.53 trillion naira, a record high bid. Nigeria's 1 year treasury bill T-bill auction on Wednesday witnessed the largest investor interest this year, and you can check details on page 30. And the last story on the front page of Business Day newspaper says, what next for Nollywood after funding pulled back from Netflix? Turn to page 30 for details of that story, and that's all on the Business Day newspaper.
And the last paper for today is Sporting Sun. The big story, look man to replace Salah at Anfield. Messi bodyguard goes after Pogba. Big mistake. Mbappe reacts to missing another penalty. You can find details on page 3. A story at the back page, Joshua Fury battle for Boxer of the Year award. English clubs tempting Inacho. You can find details on page 6. Salah breaks Premier League record. Yamal told what he lacks. And we have Ron Maggi's Man United transfer target. You can find details inside the paper. Van Nistelrooy, secret behind Ndidi's Motim Award. Super Eagles get presidential boost to qualify for 2026 World Cup. Djokovic joins Messi Neymar challenge. You can find details at the back page. Kimmich Davis not ready for Bayern exit. Messi CR7 salute Celtic Stadium. And we have Guterres close to Real Madrid move. You can find details inside the paper. And that's all the news on Sporting Sun, and also where we will be stopping the show today. Thank you, Joyce, for doing the program with me. You're welcome. And thank you to our viewer for staying from the beginning to the end of the show. Thank you to the production crew. Thank you for all those who made this program possible. Thank you to the Echo Executive. Till we come your way next week, do have a wonderful day. Goodbye.